The middle class is dying and it's affecting a lot of people, especially young people today. The middle class used to be the backbone of every society. Like, if you had a full time job, you would already be part of the middle class economically. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore with how things are going. It seems like the rich people have gotten richer and everyone else has gotten poorer. Not just having less money, but our wages don't seem to follow the price increases that's been going on for a long time. Today I'm going to talk about the decline of the middle class, what could be done, and if there is a light at the end of the tunnel. One big issue is the current state of the housing market. I'm going to tell about my grandpa here, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this, especially with your own parents or grandparents, depending on your age. So, I live in an apartment area about a 15-minute drive from the capital in my country. It's a popular place with a growing population, and there's plenty of available public transport into the city where a ton of people commute to work each day, so naturally it's going to be expensive here. But, anyways, when my grandpa bought an apartment in the same area I live in, it cost him about a year worth of salary. Even though at the time it was almost impossible to get a loan from the bank, that still sounds like a bargain, right? To be fair, they had some other purchases that was much more expensive back then. Cars were a lot more expensive and especially electronics. I remember my dad told me when he was a kid, buying a TV or a fridge would cost them like a month or even months worth of salary. And you can get those electronics for a few $100s now. Anyway, I bought this apartment almost 4 years ago, and again, it's the same apartment area that my grandfather lived in. And I also made less money back then, but at the time of me purchasing it, it was equal to like 10 years worth of my salary after taxes. This apartment is nothing fancy either. It's from the 60s, right under 70 square meters, but that price just seems so insane. I am very fortunate and happy with my apartment, so I'm not complaining. I'm just wondering like what happened and why did housing get so expensive? Owning a home, it's gonna be your biggest and most expensive purchase ever in your life probably. And when getting into the housing market is so difficult as it is today, a lot of people will just lose faith in the system and be afraid that they will never get into the market. And it's a serious problem, especially for the younger generation, and it's only getting worse every year, it seems. This brings me into another topic, which is, your wages versus the cost of living. I don't have to tell you that the cost of living has just ran upwards at a much faster pace than the increase of our wages. The norm back in the day was, the man was out working while the woman was at home taking care of the house and the kids. You didn't even really need a fancy job. Most jobs were paid so that you could afford to take care of your whole family with a single income. I mean, if you are able to do that today, you are probably earning a very decent income. But for most people, one income is not enough to take care of everything. And in some cases, even two incomes, you and your partner, is still not sufficient any longer. You can just look up statistics on this and it will tell you that everything has gotten more difficult. And this seems really unfair to me because by almost, every metric, worker productivity has increased, yet the wages haven't been able to keep up, unfortunately. Even though we are earning more than our parents and their parents before them, our purchasing power has gone down because the cost of living has gone ballistic. If you pair a housing market that's hard to get into with basic things like food having increased so much these last years, you're just gonna have a whole ass generation that will struggle a lot when it comes to just paying their bills and being able to afford food on the table. It's crazy how expensive food has gotten, and for a lot of people, food is often, their highest cost in terms of expenses, especially if you have kids or multiple kids, even. So much of your money is going towards this. Some people are just unlucky and, had a bad luck with the dice from their birth. Just think about medical expenses. Sure, there are a lot of medical problems that people have that are self-inflicted, and it's kind of their own fault. But you can be a perfectly healthy young person with a good, healthy and active lifestyle, and suddenly find out that you have some serious medical problems. If you get unlucky like that, you might get in a lot of medical debt. If you have insurance, that insurance might increase a lot, and you're forced to pay a lot of your paycheck towards that. Even if you live in a country with universal healthcare, you might have to get disabled benefits from the government, and that will, it will always be less than what you originally made. You might get in an accident and you're never able to work again, and then you're just forced to get on benefits, and those don't pay great, and you will never have that opportunity to go out and make money on your own. If you are healthy, can work and chase after your own dreams, be grateful, and don't take that for granted. A lot of people have issues and wish they were in your shoes, so do the best you can, because if that were you on the other side, you would only hope that you could have that opportunity. I mentioned earlier that it seems like the rich are getting richer and everyone else is getting poorer. Wealth inequality is a big problem and it's still increasing. I'm not saying you should, take money from people who work for it and give it to those who don't. What I'm saying is, the stock market and big corporations are growing, and they, in my opinion, they use you as a pawn to better their economic well being. I'm sure there are exceptions, some small businesses where the owner genuinely cares about his employers. But for the most part, these companies don't care about you. And in most cases, they are not even paying you a fair wage, in my opinion. Their goal is to maximize profits, and, always keep this in mind when you are at a job. The company is not your friend and don't care about you for the most part. So don't have this sense of loyalty towards them. As your goal should be to maximize your income, just as their goal is the same. So we have talked about the problems with the housing market, and that it is getting more difficult to be able to afford a home every year that goes by. Young people are noticing this, and our kids will probably feel it even more. Our wages are stagnant and are keeping up with the cost of things, and we are having less money to spend and save than our previous generations. While the rich are getting richer and everyone else is getting poorer, and companies don't care about your well being. They want to make as much money they can while paying you as little as possible. Is there a way out of this? And what can you do to prepare yourself or better your current situation? With all the technology and means we have today, compared to our parents and those before them, I find it hard to accept that we are facing this issue, on a much bigger scale. I do believe that this is somewhat dependent on our politicians. I'm sure there's a lot they could do, or at least try, with different policies and initiatives, but I honestly don't trust them that they care about us as individuals or our well being. I'm sure there are some politicians who genuinely try their best, but for the most part, they seem to care mostly about themselves and their own group. So I don't think we should put our faith and rely on them to fix this. One thing I would change when I was younger is I would probably prepare myself more than I did. When I was living at home, I barely had any expenses, so I had a lot of money to do whatever I want with. A lot of it was spent on, stupid shit I didn't really need, but I was young and finally had money, and I wasn't really thinking about this then. I was just thinking in the moment. If you are living at home and making money, don't be like me. You should absolutely start saving as much as you can and maybe invest if the risk doesn't scare you. You will be so thankful later that you did, and as you never know what's going to happen with your economic situation and also with your life in general. Try not to live above your means and don't buy things to impress others. It's honestly not worth it. You can buy a really cool car, but anyone can take a loan and do that. So you having that car won't necessarily signal to others that you have money. It just signals that you took a big loan from the bank. Please leave your thoughts down below if you agree with me or not, or if you have some steps you are taking to better survive in these times. That's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.